there's really no territory we probably couldn't get into that you don't have knowledge and statistics and some recommendation on. It's really amazing.
Thank you. That means a lot. That definitely means a lot. And listen, so I've been diving into your world as well. And I just listened to your episode with Greg Braden.
Oh my God.
Oh.
That's like, for sure, Greg is like my everyday thoughts. Like the things that we talk about are, I love the universe. I love quantum physics. I love reality. And I've always been into health and wellness. But when it comes to all of that kind of stuff, I'm like, oh my God. Do you think about that stuff too?
Of course. When all of this craziness start to kick off, the first two people that I looked to like, what is their perspective, was Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden.
Oh my God.
And so, I know Bruce. So fortunately, like, I was able to have a conversation with him and feature his perspective. And I mean, my goodness, it was very affirmative because I kind of already knew where they would take things. And I mean, they were both just kind of really trying to shift our focus back to, empowerment and being able to take a meta perspective on all of these things. And Bruce was really hammering home, and he took us through really the biology of fear and how that's compromising our immune system. And this was over a year ago when I had him on and talked about it. And I don't know if you saw this, but I posted the CDC study, the most recent study. And so they analyzed, it was 800 US hospitals, over 540,000 COVID patients. And they found that the number one risk factor for death from COVID was obesity, which is something we know. Are we doing something about it? Of course not. But the second leading risk factor for death from COVID in this massive meta-analysis was anxiety and fear-related disorders.
Well, then my questions that I have in mind are going to be perfect. I mean, Bruce, I've learned so much. I mean, I would love an intro to Bruce. I've been trying to get him on. I've had Greg, and then the other part of this like little trio is Joe Dispenza. Like those guys end up going out and doing speaking gigs and stuff. And so I've had Joe on, I've had Greg on, and I really want to have Bruce because the epigenetics fascinates me. And I have so many questions about epigenetics and how, I was listening to him talk about splitting, having I think it was what would it have been? A gene that was multiplied into like 10,000 of them were multiplied into, and then they split them into 3 dishes, and each of those dishes were given different environments. And then all of those genetics became the environment. And so like this whole idea of epigenetics and how we become who we are, and if epigenetics is something that we have to be cognitively aware of for it to become us, or if we're able to just be in proximity to it. I mean, I'm just so fascinated by all that. And he's a pro at that.
First of all, I'll connect you. So that's already done. Second of all, the thing that he always brings me back to, even when I talk about the environment, even when I talk about, various expressions and potential, he always leads me back to the fact that your thoughts are the most powerful influence over all of it. It is your thoughts that are determining your genetic expression, to the nth degree. So whether we believe in it or not, it's still creating.
Yeah.
And so it's super fascinating.
Yeah. Well, we're creating our reality. I mean, when people have said for a long time that, this is just kind of a stage and we're actors and we're just, whether we're holographic in nature or not, but our thoughts are creating our reality. And I think, wasn't it the double slit experiment that showed that when you put attention on to something, it changes it, which means that our conscious awareness to something is what's creating. That's just mind blowing.
It is. But this is, it's, put it under this big umbrella of the observer effect. And, there's even a really fascinating study. I first learned about it from Greg Braden, and it was the phantom DNA experiment. And so the thing about me too is like, I'll take those things and I will just like go in deep and actually, review the analysis, review the studies, the outcomes, and start to question things like, what did they not see in this? What could be another potential? What's another explanation? But the phantom DNA experiment, basically they took a vacuum, which if you have a vacuum, and I'm not talking about a vacuum cleaner, I'm talking about like a chamber that eliminates everything from being able to enter it or to leave it. And there's no like, oxygen infusion, none of that stuff. It's just it's a closed vacuum seal. And there would be nothing in the vacuum. They made sure that there was nothing at all in the vacuum. But there's something you cannot possibly remove, which is biophotons, these kind of little packets of energy, of light that make up our reality. So there's nothing they could do about that. And so what they did was they took some human DNA and put it into the vacuum. And something really strange happened. The biophotons that were just kind of in the seemingly random assortment throughout in the vacuum conformed themselves and basically attached themselves to the human DNA. They left in their scattered arrangement and conformed to the DNA. Now, that was already interesting. And now here's where it gets really weird. They took the DNA out and expected the biophotons to just go back to their scattered, seemingly random arrangement, but they didn't. They still stayed in conformation with the human DNA, as if the DNA was still there. So for that moment, the human DNA left a permanent impression upon the very stuff that makes up our reality. And so this speaks to, again, that's just a tiny portion of our DNA, let alone this conscious sentient being and how much power we have on influencing the world around us. So, experiments like that. But then it just goes back also to, when I mentioned our thoughts influencing our genetic expression, every thought we have creates correlating chemistry in our bodies instantaneously. And this is the rub, is that whether the thought is real, based on accurate data, or if it's based on something that's totally made up, your brain and your physiology don't know the difference, but you are instantaneously changing your entire biochemistry. Every single cell in your body, the trillions of cells, are instantaneously changing based on your thoughts, every single microsecond.
I've been saying thoughts become things for a long time. I watched The Secret back in 2008, which is still just 2 years after it came out, so it's still pretty early. And I watched it before I interviewed her recently, and in it, I don't remember exactly which one said it, but it's like, thoughts become things. And I was like, oh my God, that's why I've been saying that for so long, because that's probably where I heard it. And, you're just explaining how that's true. And so what I love is that, because you're such a deep diver on the information and the analytics of things and the science and the technical part of aspect of all of these things or thoughts that we have or awarenesses that we have, which is so cool, because there's so many people that are willing to take things at face value, and that's fine. But it's when you can truly explain it from a scientific perspective, from a biochemistry perspective, that it really convinces and anchors people into a new level of not just awareness, but belief in that awareness, because belief is like the magic sauce to everything. It's one thing to say, I can go dunk a basketball. It's another thing for me to actually go believe that I could go dunk a basketball. So, because I'm 5'1". So that believing is, I think, what really will help people transform, which is why I'm excited about this conversation, because, I feel like in our world today, there's so much going on. There's so much like outside of our control to directly go out and do something about. And so the only control we really have is over ourselves. And, the truth is that the collective holds the power. And so long as we participate in a system, participate in a thought pattern or a paradigm, it continues to exist. Like I say, if you don't think that the newspaper is telling the truth, stop buying it, and they won't exist very long. If you don't think that the news is telling you the right thing on the television, stop watching it, and I promise you it'll go away. And so what I want to have a conversation about is not necessarily out there, but in here. And what can we do? Because basically, if we all changed our and I'm going to hit some buckets with you, because I just am fascinated. I love the knowledge you have. But if we can affect our mind and our body and our spirit and all the things that have to do with us, if we all did that, the world would be transformed.